Hello and welcome to the Northwood University webinar series. I'm Christopher Deming, and today we have Jackie Georgiou with Homeschooling 101. If you're new here, welcome. We're glad you're with us. If you have questions, please use the Q&A tab on the right. We will get to as many questions and answers as we can at the end of our program. This webinar is being recorded, so you will receive a recorded version of this webinar a little bit later, along with a survey to let us know what you thought of it. Without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Jackie Georgiou. She's a 2003 graduate who lives in Chicago with her husband, Angelo, with their 4 children. She has been homeschooling her children for 6 years, and in her spare time, she enjoys dog training, gardening, and cooking. Without any delay, please welcome Jackie Georgiou.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we're going to talk a little bit about getting started in homeschooling and what the best practices are for getting your children off to a good start and having success as a family. So thank you again for joining us, and let's get started. As they said, I am Jackie Georgiou, and I graduated from Northwood in 2003. I am married to Angelo Georgiou, who graduated Northwood in '99. We live in the Chicago suburbs, and we have been homeschooling our children for 6 years. We're about to start our 7th year, and we have had great success in homeschooling over the years, and I just am passionate about it. And I love to share with other families how it can be successful for them as well. I started homeschooling my children when my oldest was entering the 2nd grade. The reason that we decided to homeschool is because we now have 4 children, but at the time we had 3. We had just moved to the Chicago suburbs, and our daughter, who was very, very passionate about school, had a massive decline in her behavior and her social skills. School was just not working for her. We did some testing and found out that she is profoundly gifted and was not receiving the support that she needed in school. Through our testing at Northwestern University, the test proctor said to us, if you can, pull her out of the public school system and homeschool her. Like I said, Alexandra, who is my oldest, went from being a lover of all things education to crying every day and not wanting to be in school. So switching her to homeschool was not only great for us as a family, but great for her personally. She needed that change. So that is why we got started homeschooling. But it has really evolved over the last 6 years as to why we do it and our passions for it. I will say that when I began the homeschooling journey, I did a lot of research. It was not a decision that I made lightly. At the time, it was not considered a normal thing for people to do. But we're in a very, very different time these days. And so your decisions may be happening faster than mine were. And I'm hopeful that I can give you encouragement today and help you to understand how easy it really can be. As I said, I do have 4 children. They are ages 2, 7, 10, and 13. So I have 3 that are school aged, going into 2nd, 5th, and 8th grades. I am a stay-at-home mom. I do not work outside the home, and I will address that later. You can still homeschool moms and dads if you are working full-time. We will talk about that later. I also just restarted my blog because I have been getting so many questions about homeschooling and where to begin. So I did restart my blog, pumpkinsinthepatch.com, and I'd welcome you to come and visit me over there. Okay. So why are we here? You are likely here because you are finding yourself in the position of saying, don't want my child to go back to this distance learning model, or perhaps I don't want my child to go back to the regular classroom because we're nervous about how COVID is going to impact everything in the coming months. In the spring, nobody was expecting to be in the position that they were in. COVID forced many schools to move to a distance learning model, and I know around here, distance learning, hybrid models, and in-person learning were all being discussed. Parents thought that their children were going back to school in the fall, and then suddenly received an email saying, it's not going to happen. Everybody is virtual. So parents who had hoped that their child would be going back to their normal day-to-day were maybe more surprised because they thought that their voices were being heard, and it turned out that it's just not going to happen. So spring semester was not a great experience for many children or parents. I talked to a lot of parents. Some had wonderful experiences. They had teachers that were all in and ready to go, and made the distance learning experience a wonderful one. And then others had teachers who maybe just weren't prepared or not on board with how things were going and didn't have the best experience. I know that a lot of parents felt overwhelmed by the lack of support from their school districts and maybe not a lot of preparation. And we all still want what's best for our children. And so that's why parents have started coming to me and asking about homeschooling. It is a wonderful option. We just need some guidance to get started because we don't have a ton of runway left. What I would encourage each of you to do as your first step is to visit hslda.org. And I will provide you at the end, I'll put on my blog the different places for you to visit. I would encourage you to go to hslda.org and see what laws and regulations you must abide by. I did take the opportunity to pull up Michigan's laws and regulations just so we can take a peek at them, because I'm assuming that many of our participants will be Michigan residents. HSLDA does offer guidance for all states, and if you join their legal representation, they will also walk you through if you're out of country. Michigan, as our example, has 2 homeschooling options. And like I said, HSLDA will walk you through step by step what you need to do in order to homeschool your children in the most legal way possible, to make sure that you don't have a visit from a truancy officer or anything like that. And that's not said to scare you. It's just the time that we're in right now. A lot of schools are saying, hey, where are my students? Where are they going? So you want to make sure that you're following the requirements. As the example, Michigan's option number 1, which is the option that I would choose, is that you as a parent are welcome to teach your own children at home, and you are just required to use an educational program covering the basic subjects that would be covered in any school setting. So reading, spelling, math, science, history, civics, literature, writing, and English grammar. The statute in Michigan does not require that parents notify your local government or education authorities that you are homeschooling. And it specifically notes that you are authorized to give home instruction. That is a concern for a lot of parents. A lot of people ask me, do I have to be a teacher? Do I have to have some sort of certificate? What am I required to have and do in order to homeschool my children? So again, every state is listed on there. You can access that information for free. So I encourage you, if you are considering homeschooling, to look at your state's individual homeschool regulations to understand what you need to do in order to fit within their guidelines. So I want to encourage you that all of you can homeschool. Homeschooling does not have to be school at home. Your goal is education of your children. It is not necessarily to duplicate the exact things that would happen in the classroom. There are many different styles of homeschool education. We use the classical method, which is what works for us. Because of that, I have specific curriculum that I have chosen to use. And we can talk about that as well. And I have all of that information up on my blog. Each of my children have a very set curriculum and resources that we use. And they've been things that we've tried over the years and found to be very successful for us. One of the great things about homeschooling is that there are so many choices available. So if you have a student who's a particular type of learner, for example, you have someone who's a very visual learner, you can use materials that support that type of education. If you have a student who loves to read, which is my students, which is why we use the classical method, you can use curriculum that really is literature rich. There are lots and lots of options out there for those different types of education. I also want to encourage you that it does not take 8 hours every day to educate each child. Each of my children probably takes a couple hours of my time each day, and I do overlap. So I might teach history, a history curriculum that works for multiple ages, which is kind of based on the one-room schoolhouse model that people used to use back in the prairie days, back until the early 20th century, where all of the students were in one classroom learning the same type of curriculum, just at different levels. You will choose your curriculum based on your children and what kind of learners they are. For example, I had said, we have literature-based, we have visual-based, all types of different methods available. You also want to choose your curriculum based on yourself. Do you want to teach every subject, or do you want to maybe outsource some of those things? So you can order materials that you teach 100% at home. You can use a hybrid model where your children may take some classes virtually, where they collaborate with other students, other homeschooled students. And you may have tutoring situations where you hire a tutor. For example, my daughter, my oldest, is doing Algebra 1 this year, and she is using an online academy where she will have virtual classes for 2 to 3 hours every week, where she will collaborate with other students and a professor. And then the rest of the time, we are working together at home. You also want to consider your situation. If you still need to work, that's fine. You can absolutely still teach your children at home. If you have more than one child, you'll want to consider that as well. You won't want to necessarily use a curriculum that is 100% parent-driven for a long period of the day. You'll want something that they can do some more independent learning as well. Scheduling is very important when you are homeschooling. Your classes don't have to happen during normal school hours. So your kids don't have to get up at 8 a.m. and work until 3 p.m. If you are working, you can absolutely teach your children when you're done with work for the day. You can work on weekends together. There are lots of different options for homeschooling. It does not have to look like the very regimented work that's done in the public school system. You have the freedom to switch things up or chase an idea. If you are learning biology with your student and you are talking about cellular models and you can see your child's eyes light up, you can absolutely set that curriculum aside and go and learn more about those different things. So you can be as regimented or as relaxed as you need, and you can do what works for you. Find what motivates your individual students. If math is a struggle, break it up into manageable bites. You don't have to go through all 100 questions that are listed in the curriculum. If your student is doing better than their school age, you can advance them beyond. I also want to mention that when we're homeschooling, it's easy to get bogged down in hey, these are the lessons I have to complete by the end of the semester. Don't forget to have fun. One of the wonderful things that happens in homeschooling is you will improve your relationship with your children, and you will have the opportunity to learn and grow together. So enjoy the freedom, but accept your limits. Classes don't have to be age specific. I teach history, science, and art to multiple ages at once. 2 of my kids will be learning the same history curriculum. I will just ask them to do their book work differently. I may have different levels of book work for them, but the same curriculum. So my son, who is going into 2nd grade, obviously won't be writing paragraphs in answers to questions. He may be doing something that's more drawing based, or maybe 1 or 2 sentences. Science and art are the same. You can absolutely teach those subjects to multiple ages at the same time. Just because your child is in 2nd grade doesn't mean he or she can't work at a higher or lower level according to their ability. So by saying that, I'm saying if my son is beyond that 2nd grade math limit, I can move him up into a 3rd grade book. And there are evaluations that are listed for every type of curriculum. So for example, we use Saxon Math. If I go to the Saxon website, I can take a look at their evaluations, have my son do some questions, and decide what level he needs to be in. If you don't feel comfortable teaching a subject, outsource. We outsource Latin and this year algebra to an online academy. We use Memoria Press Online Academy, and we use the Well-Trained Mind Online Academy, where there are professors that are much more well-versed in those subjects than I am. I never learned Latin, but my children are doing a very good job in Latin. I'm very proud of them, and I really have to give credit to the online academies that we have used for those classes. I want to point you to some resources that have been extremely helpful for me. Of course, there's my website there, which in the coming days will have more and gives you the opportunity to reach out to me as you need. I'm happy to encourage you. RainbowResource.com is where I choose to purchase almost all of my curriculum from. And the reason that I use Rainbow Resource is they have everything from everyone, but they also offer much better prices on their curriculum. And they're located here in Illinois, and I like to support my local economy. The book, The Well-Trained Mind by Susan Wise Bauer, I have an old copy of it here. I'll show you that. I'm missing my, we're down here. I am missing my book cover, but this book has been a wealth of knowledge for me. I've had it for about 7, almost 8 years now, and I continue to use this book as a resource every year. It is invaluable. Also, The Classical Reader from Christopher Perrin is a wonderful place to find age-specific and reading level-specific books that you can read with your children that will offer them a rich experience in literature. I do offer consultation services and evaluation and curriculum advice. You're welcome to reach out to me to find those things. And I'm happy to work together with anyone, especially fellow Northwood alum, to get you guys started. I just want to end by encouraging you and saying that you absolutely can do it. Some parents wonder what my kids are going to drive me nuts. There's no way I'll have the patience to homeschool them all day long. That we definitely have days that are difficult around here, and on those days we put it down and we go outside, or we change the scenery and we say, you know what, maybe we're not schooling today. We'll pick it back up again tomorrow, and that's okay, because education is a lifelong goal. It doesn't have to be a very regimented today, tomorrow, the next day, checking the boxes as we go type of experience. We can absolutely continue to educate our children day by day, minute by minute. They are learning. They are little sponges, and they will pick up so much as you go. I definitely want to encourage each of you to say, this is something I can do. It doesn't have to be difficult. And I guarantee you, you will have a wonderful experience, and you will have a richer relationship with your child for having gone through the homeschool process together. So that was all very fast, and I hope that I got it all in there. That we're about out of time.
No, we're good. Thank you so much, Jackie, for all that. That information was really, really good. As the moderator of today's session, I get the choice to ask the first question, so I am going to ask the first question. I think sometimes inappropriately, I think it's assumed that homeschooled children don't have the same social opportunities that non-homeschooled children have, and I'm sure you get asked that a lot. What sort of things do you like to do to help bring your children into society?
Sure. So I always think that that's a silly question as a homeschool mom, because I don't see it that way. So whenever I do get that asked that question, which I will say I get asked very infrequently, because people who are seeing my children see that they are very well socialized. One thing that I will say about homeschool kids is they are not in a classroom with kids their own age 8 hours a day. So our kids are instead socializing with all different types of people during their daytime. Message. My kids dance. We attend church. We volunteer in our community. We have lots of friends that come and go from our home all day long, and we go there. So really, I mean, my kids are out in in a social atmosphere very, very often. And I will say the only thing that I see as an issue with socialization is my kids don't necessarily relate to kids their own age all the time, because they are not in, like I said, that classroom where they're surrounded by children their own age 8 hours a day. We also participate in a lot of sports, and in the past have spent a lot of time at the library.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of opportunities for socialization. And in today's age, with the way that we're so connected, that's really not an issue the way it was when people were more isolated.
Makes total sense. We have a question here too. What online academy do you use for collaborative lessons? Referenced algebra, and I think you also said Latin. I have to add a caveat here too. I tried to learn Latin as an undergraduate, so I applaud your children for taking it now. In addition, they said, great presentation. We have homeschooled for 10 years, but have spent the last 6 years in public school. I have one more to get through middle school and high school. Our middle daughter just moved to Northwood yesterday, our alma mater too.
Fantastic. Congratulations. So the academies that we use currently are Memoria Press Online Academy. Memoria Press does offer just curriculum, so you can teach your child at home. But then with a lot of their curriculum, they also offer online academy experiences, so your children can learn those things with a teacher. For example, my daughter's first Latin teacher had a PhD in Latin. I'm not really sure why, but I'll tell you what, she learned a lot from him, and it was his passion. So his name is Dr. Will Height, and he is a wonderful, wonderful man. And Lexi has been taking Latin for 4 years now. She just took the National Latin exam and did very well. There's just so many opportunities out there for your kids to learn outside of mom and dad. So we use Memoria Press Online Academy, and we use Well-Trained Mind Online Academy. I use a lot of Well-Trained Mind resources for my children starting in second grade. And then as they get older, I do move them to Well-Trained Mind Academy for the more in-depth lessons with their instructors. I do know that the Well-Trained Mind Academy has shut down registration because they were incredibly overwhelmed with registrations for this year. So they have stopped registration, but Memorial Press is still taking registration, and there are other online academies that still have openings. I checked yesterday. The Institute for Excellence in Writing is a wonderful academy. They do still have some openings starting, I believe, in third grade for writing. Again, I'm going to put together a resource list for parents to go to and access to see, where can I go? What can I do? So.
We have just a few minutes left. As a reminder, if you're attending today's webinar, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A tab on the right. It'll help identify your question outside of the chat. I have another question that I'd like to ask you, Jackie. For a lot of people, this is homeschooling not necessarily by choice, and they have to reconcile whatever their local district is doing with whatever they can accomplish at home. What piece of advice could you give to those folks who are trying to help support their children but have to oblige themselves to whatever their public school is doing?
Right. So if you're continuing to distance learn, I would ask the school district to provide you with any type of resources that they can. For example, when I teach math, I have the teacher's manuals. I'm not just going into it blind. And I know that was something that was difficult for other families as they were distance learning, is their children would be stuck with problems that they weren't able to answer, and the parents didn't necessarily have the resources to say, okay, let me help you walk through this, especially when it comes to things that we didn't learn when we were in school. We didn't have Common Core math when we were in elementary, middle, and middle school. So I would encourage parents to ask for those materials or find out how they can access that type of information. A teacher's manual really goes a long way when it comes to helping your students along. Even when my kids do online academies, I have the teacher's manuals because they're in online academies a couple of hours for each class each week, but then the remainder does fall on me as the parent to continue to guide them. So those teacher's manuals really are again, invaluable in helping our kids to get a really solid education.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I appreciate all of your insights today, Jackie. I'm going to give it just one more minute if we have any other last minute questions. I am going to ask you a short question though. How do you, is your spouse working from home now? And if so, how do you manage the homeschool area versus work area? Obviously, homeschooling happens everywhere, but I have to assume there's some sort of a division there.
Right. So my husband has actually worked from home for the last couple of years, and had just switched back to going into the office when we were put back into a home office model. So for us, it was not a big adjustment. We're all used to being under the same roof. My husband does have a home office that he goes to. My children are welcome to school wherever is comfortable for them in my home. Some people do set up a school room in their house or a dedicated spot, and that's what works for them, and that's great. We tend to do a lot of our schooling around our coffee table in our family room. So really just finding places where people can have their individual space when it's needed. My daughters take their laptops to their bedrooms when they're having online academy time, so they have quiet and they can really focus. We do also music lessons over Zoom, and I will be with them when they're doing those things. And I just send my children to another space so that we can have that time. So it really is about managing the chaos, because otherwise it could get very loud. And I'm sure my husband wouldn't appreciate that when he's on a Zoom meeting trying to close contracts, and I have, a 2-year-old screaming and a 13-year-old yelling, I need this and I need that. So we just have to manage our day. Scheduling is very important. We do work together. So my husband will tell me, listen, I have this going on today. I'm going to need a quiet house. We may do outside learning that day, or have the kids go up to the second floor. It's just about managing the chaos.
We have a question in the Q&A. What is your experience/opinion on pod learning, creating small groups of like-aged children for homeschooling?
So that's similar to what we've always done in homeschooling. We call it co-ops. I think it's a wonderful experience, and if you feel comfortable with the group of people that you're going to be with, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think that if parents can work together to teach their children in a combined environment, I think it's great. Kids can continue to collaborate. We have used that method in the past, where we have kids that are varying ages and we're working together to do chemistry lessons. It's a lot of fun. So I think that homeschooling is going to be a great option for parents, especially if they feel comfortable in the COVID situation. So if you're comfortable with your kids still being together in a room, pod schooling is a great option. I think it's a wonderful thing that has sprung up in the last, I would say, couple of weeks or months. Parents talking about that.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much for your time today and providing us with all of your expertise. With respect for your time and the time of our attendees, we typically try to keep this to 30 minutes, and we are just now at 12:32. So for all of our attendees, thank you for joining us today. We will be hosting another webinar next month, to be determined date, time, and speaker, but you will be receiving invitations just like you received an invitation to this one. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, please feel free to include those in the survey that you will receive after the fact. Thanks again, Jackie.
Thank you. Have a great day.